The moment my moving truck backed into the driveway, I knew trouble was coming. But I never imagined the HOA president would completely lose control. She sprinted toward me, screaming like I was committing a crime, accusing me of escaping punishment, and threatening consequences I'd never even heard of. Then, right in front of my neighbors, she pulled out her phone and called the cops on me for moving out of my own house. What she didn't know is that this move was just the beginning of a much bigger shock waiting for her. Welcome to Confessions of HOA. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe. I was halfway through loading the moving truck when I saw her marching down the sidewalk like she owned the entire neighborhood. The HOA president, Karen in every sense of the word, had that tight, angry smile she only used when she thought she had power over someone. And today, unfortunately, that someone was me. She didn't bother with a greeting. Instead, she pointed at the boxes stacked in the driveway and snapped, "You can't leave. Not until your outstanding fines are handled." I stared at her, confused. What fines? I paid everything last month. She crossed her arms dramatically. The HOA board issued new penalties. Grass too long. Curtains the wrong shade. Your trash bin was visible for 13 minutes after collection. You owe us. You're not going anywhere. I almost laughed. I'm moving out. I'm done with this. But she didn't find it funny. Her voice rose an octave. Moving out without HOA clearance is a violation. This is an illegal move out, and I will report it. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, right in front of me. "Hello?" "Yes, this is an emergency," she said loudly, pacing like she was performing for an audience. "A resident is attempting to flee the neighborhood without paying mandatory HOA fees. I need officers here immediately." I just stood there stunned. She really called the cops. Because I was moving. A few neighbors peeked out their windows. Some even stepped outside to watch, whispering to each other. And Karen, still pacing, kept glancing at me with that smug, victorious smirk, as if she had already won. That's when I realized something. She wasn't angry because I was leaving. She was angry because she was losing control. And she had no idea that this move would be the beginning of her downfall. But Karen had no idea. This move wasn't an escape. It was a setup for the biggest shock of her life. About 15 minutes after her dramatic 911 call, I heard the sound of a car rolling slowly down the street. I turned around and saw a patrol cruiser coming to a stop right in front of my driveway. 2 officers stepped out, one older, one younger, both wearing the exact expression people get when they know they're about to deal with nonsense. The older officer approached me first, glancing at the moving truck at the boxes, then back at Karen, who was standing proudly with her hands on her hips, like she had just summoned law enforcement to arrest a fugitive. He cleared his throat. We got a call about something going on here?" Before I could say a word, Karen rushed forward like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Yes, he is attempting an illegal move out," she declared, loud enough for the entire block to hear. "He's violating multiple HOA regulations, refusing to pay outstanding fines, and trying to flee the neighborhood." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "Illegal move out?" I couldn't help it. I laughed. "I'm literally moving furniture, man." The older officer looked at Karen. "Ma'am, moving out isn't a criminal offense." She stomped her foot. "But he is violating HOA rules. He can't leave until the board approves. We have protocols." Both officers exchanged a look, the kind that silently says, "Yeah, this is going in tonight's story at the station." The older officer sighed. "Ma'am, HOA disputes are civil matters, not police matters. We can't arrest someone for relocating their couch." She gasped, offended. "So you're just going to let him break the rules? He's escaping consequences." The younger officer tried to keep a straight face. "Ma'am, it's his house. He's allowed to move his things." But Karen wasn't letting it go. She pointed aggressively at the moving truck. "He's leaving without permission. He owes fines. This is theft of services. It's destruction of community order." The officers looked at me again, this time apologetically. Sir, the older one said, are you, planning on paying whatever fine she's talking about? I already did. Twice. She keeps inventing new ones. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that happens with some HOAs. The moment he said that, Karen spun around. Excuse me. Some HOAs? What's that supposed to mean? We're not getting involved, the younger officer cut in. Ma'am, unless this man is breaking a criminal law, there's nothing we can do here. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a glitching NPC. You're useless. Both of you. She shrieked. The officers didn't even argue. They simply gave me a small nod, turned back to their cruiser, and left. As soon as they were gone, Karen's embarrassment twisted into rage. She leaned closer, her voice low but venomous. You think this is over? You're not getting away with this. I smiled calmly. Karen, you have no idea what's coming. Little did she know the real shock was still waiting, and it had the power to destroy her entire sense of control. After the officers drove away, the street finally went quiet. For a moment I just stood there, watching their cruiser disappear down the road, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Karen was still lingering on the sidewalk, pretending to check her clipboard, pretending she had some kind of authority left. But I ignored her. I had bigger things on my mind. As I went back to loading boxes into the truck, I thought about how long it had taken to reach this point. Moving out wasn't a sudden decision. It wasn't a dramatic reaction to one bad week. This was years in the making. It started small little warnings, petty notes left on my door about minor violations. At first, I didn't care. I thought it was normal HOA stuff. But it kept getting worse. The first fine was for a garden pot that didn't match the community aesthetic. The second was because my grass was too long, even though it was barely a centimeter above their requirement. Then came the trash bin fines, the mailbox maintenance fines, the you parked 2 inches outside your driveway line fines. Every time I paid one, another showed up. It felt like Karen was watching my house 24/7, waiting for the smallest excuse to hit me with a penalty. And honestly, she probably was. Then the home improvement requests started getting rejected. I wanted to repaint the exterior. Denied. Replace my fence. Denied. Install a security camera. Denied because it might affect neighborhood harmony. When I confronted her, she didn't even look guilty. She simply said, if you follow the rules, you won't have to worry about these visits. Visits. Plural. Like she had already planned more. That was the day I started looking for a new place to live. I wanted peace. I wanted freedom. I wanted to wake up without worrying about what ridiculous rule I was supposedly breaking next. Life is too short to argue over mailbox colors and lawn length with a woman who treats the HOA like her personal kingdom. So I found a new property. A better property. A place where people minded their business. A place with no Karen watching from behind her blinds. And now, standing there with a moving truck full of everything I owned, I knew I had made the right choice. Karen wasn't losing a resident. She was losing her favorite target. But she still didn't know the full truth, because the place I was moving to would change everything for her. Once the last few boxes were in the truck, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Leaving that neighborhood felt like taking off a heavy backpack I didn't realize I'd been carrying for years. What Karen didn't know, what no one in that neighborhood knew, was that I wasn't just moving to some random house across town. My new home wasn't a house at all. It was land. A huge open plot just outside city limits. And completely outside the reach of any HOA. No rules. No endless fines. No self-appointed tyrant watching my every move. Just space. Quiet. Freedom. I had quietly purchased it months earlier. I had spent every weekend visiting the site, walking the land, imagining what I would build there. A place designed the way I wanted. A place where nobody could tell me my fence was too tall or my trash bin was visible for 14 unacceptable minutes. But that wasn't the real twist. The real twist was the second purchase. See, the land I bought wasn't just for myself. I'd been working with a development company on a long-term investment project. And as part of that deal, I had bought the entire block directly behind Karen's HOA. 4 acres of unused land that bordered the back of the neighborhood. For years, the HOA tried to buy that land but never had the funds. They wanted to turn it into a private nature reserve or community-controlled green space. But I had beaten them to it. I kept the project quiet until my moving truck showed up that morning. That's when the rumors started. While I was tightening the last strap on the truck, I noticed 2 neighbors whispering near the driveway. One of them pointed toward my truck, then toward the back of the neighborhood. Later, another neighbor passed by and muttered almost to herself, "Is it true? Did he really buy the land?" It didn't take long for the rumor to reach Karen. I saw her pacing back and forth in her yard, phone in hand, dialing and redialing. She looked frantic, completely different from the smug, controlling president she had been just an hour earlier. Finally, she marched down the street toward me. "Did you buy property behind our community?" she asked, voice shaking. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted her to feel the tension she had created so many times for others. After a moment, I nodded. "Yes," I said simply. "All of it." She blinked rapidly. You can't. That land affects our neighborhood. That land affects property values. You need HOA approval for any development around here." I smiled. Calm. Slow. "Karen, that land isn't in your HOA. It never was. And now you have no say in what happens there." The color practically drained from her face. She looked like the ground beneath her had shifted. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control. Not anymore. And she had no idea that what I planned to build next would push her completely over the edge. I thought Karen's panic in the neighborhood was bad. But nothing prepared me for what happened when she showed up at my new property. It was 2 days after I finished moving. I was standing on the open land with the project manager, reviewing early layout plans. The sun was bright, the air was clean, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe without someone watching. Then I heard it. The sound of tires crunching gravel. Fast, angry, intentional. I turned around and saw Karen's SUV barreling down the dirt path. She slammed on the brakes so hard dust exploded around her vehicle. The moment the cloud settled, she jumped out, practically shaking with rage. She didn't even look around to appreciate the peaceful open space. She came storming straight toward me like a missile locked onto a target. "Is it true?" she snapped. "Is it true you bought all this land?" I kept my voice calm. "Yes, Karen. It's true." Her mouth curled in disbelief. "This is outrageous. You can't just buy land wherever you want. What about our community? What about our property values?" My project manager stepped back quietly, clearly wanting no part of this drama. I stayed where I was. "What I do here doesn't concern your HOA," I said gently. That was the wrong thing to say. She exploded. "Doesn't concern us? Are you serious? Any construction you do here will affect the entire neighborhood. You still must submit your plans to the HOA for approval." I blinked slowly, almost confused. "For approval? Karen, this property isn't even in your county. Your HOA has zero relevance here." She jabbed a finger in my direction. "You are still a former resident. You are still connected to our community. You can't just leave and build whatever monstrosity you want without permission." A laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "Karen, I hate to break it to you, but you don't own me. You never did. Everything around our neighborhood must follow HOA standards," she yelled. "Materials, colors, height limits, road alignment." "This isn't your neighborhood," I cut in. "This is my land. My project. My rules." Her face twisted, desperation mixing with fury. She looked around wildly, as if searching for someone else who could back her up. But there was no board here, no residents, no police she could manipulate. Just open land. And her finally powerless. "This will ruin everything," she shouted. "You're going to tank our home values. You are deliberately trying to sabotage the HOA. I shook my head. No, Karen. I'm just building something new. Something better. Something that has nothing to do with you. She opened her mouth to argue again, but the words caught in her throat. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a rule to quote or a fine to threaten. She just stood there, trembling with the realization that she had no control left to cling to. She turned, stormed back to her SUV, and drove off in a cloud of dust. But I knew she wasn't done. Not even close. Because when she finally learned what I planned to build here, she completely lost her mind. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Construction crews rolled onto my land early each morning, their trucks humming as they unloaded equipment. Surveying markers went up. Excavators carved out the first foundation lines. Concrete mixers rumbled down the dirt road. What was once an empty stretch of land slowly transformed into a buzzing, organized work zone. And it didn't take long for the nearby HOA residents to notice. At first, they came out of curiosity. Couples walking their dogs, seniors on morning strolls, teens biking around the edge of the fence. They watched from a distance, whispering, trying to guess what was being built. But as the signs went up, their curiosity turned into excitement. Shops coming soon. Community plaza under development. New lighting and walkway system. The neighborhood had been complaining for years about needing exactly these things. More stores, better sidewalks, safer lighting at night. But Karen always shot down any improvement proposals, insisting it would ruin the uniform aesthetic of the HOA. Now, the things she rejected were happening, right next door. One afternoon, a group of neighbors approached me while I was checking on the progress. An older man with a kind smile said, "I heard there's going to be a small grocery store here. Is that true?" "Yep," I nodded. "And a cafe, a playground, and walking paths. All open to everyone." Their faces lit up. Another neighbor added, "We've been asking the HOA to approve something like this for years. They kept saying it wasn't possible." "Turns out," I said, "it was very possible." Word spread fast. Every day more residents came by, some offering to help, others just excited to finally see positive development happening around their community. Kids pointed excitedly at the construction vehicles. Parents asked about timeline. Elderly neighbors thanked me for planning to add better night lighting. People were genuinely happy. Everyone except one person. Karen. I saw her often, standing at the edge of the HOA's property line, her arms crossed, her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitch from where I stood. She watched the crews work like she was witnessing someone paint her house without permission. And the worst part for her wasn't the noise, or the traffic, or the new buildings. It was the shift in the neighborhood. Residents who once reluctantly followed her rules were now looking past her, toward my project, with hope, curiosity, and excitement. Conversations moved from "what does the HOA want?" to "what's being built next door?" The power she once held over everyone was slipping through her fingers like sand. She tried to hold meetings to warn residents about potential dangers. Nobody showed up. She posted angry updates about zoning and property values. People ignored them. A few neighbors even told her directly, "This development is good for us. Leave it alone." Every day that construction progressed, Karen's grip weakened. And she knew it. But the moment she learned I was attending the next HOA meeting, everything exploded. The day of the HOA meeting arrived, and I almost didn't know how to feel. I had been invited by the residents themselves, neighbors who were tired of Karen's constant control and petty fines, who finally saw me not as a former troublemaker, but as someone bringing real change. I arrived early. The meeting room was packed with familiar faces. Families I'd waved to over the years, neighbors who had secretly complained about the endless fines, and even a few of the older residents who always seemed resigned to Karen's authority. They were buzzing quietly, excited to see what I had to show them. Karen, of course, arrived later than everyone else, striding in like she was about to deliver a victory speech. Her smile was tight, forced, and you could tell she was already anticipating what she might say to me. I waited patiently as the board began the meeting. Then, at the residents' invitation, I stood and projected the plans for the new development on the screen. The room went quiet. The designs were modern, elegant, and functional. Small shops, a community cafe, walking paths, green spaces, benches, lighting, and security features. Every detail was carefully thought out, every corner designed to benefit not just the future residents of the project, but the neighborhood next door. A few people whispered to each other. Some nodded, smiling. A man in the back whispered, "This is exactly what we've needed." Karen immediately jumped up. "This is inappropriate. You cannot just show plans like this without HOA approval. You are still bound by neighborhood rules." I calmly replied, "Karen, this property isn't in your jurisdiction. You have no authority here. These plans benefit the neighborhood, not the HOA." The board members exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they nodded and continued the meeting. Karen's objections fell flat. She tried again, louder this time, waving her hands, pacing the room. But the residents ignored her. Some even shook their heads, murmuring agreement with the board's decision to let me present. Minutes passed, and the frustration on her face grew. It was obvious to everyone how powerless she had become. Her red face, flailing arms, and repeated protests were now more entertaining than threatening. Finally, after several failed attempts to regain control, she stopped. She sank into her chair, defeated. The room was silent except for the hum of excitement over the development plans. And then, quietly but firmly, she stood up. "I resign," she muttered, avoiding eye contact with anyone. She gathered her papers and walked out, leaving a stunned but relieved crowd behind. The residents cheered quietly, smiling at each other. The board moved on, discussing how to work with the new development, while I sat back and allowed the room to feel the full impact of what had just happened. Karen was gone. Her reign over petty fines and unnecessary rules had ended. It was the ultimate reversal of power, a final public humiliation that she couldn't argue or overturn. The neighborhood had chosen progress. I had chosen freedom. And as she walked out for the last time, she had no idea what my next move would be. Something that would leave everyone speechless. After Karen resigned and the meeting ended, a quiet sense of satisfaction settled over the neighborhood. Not the kind that comes from gloating or revenge, but the kind that comes from knowing you did what was right, for yourself and for everyone around you. For years, the HOA had tried to control me. They fined me for minor things, ignored my requests, and treated every small decision as a threat to their authority. They didn't just want order, they wanted power. And for a while it felt like they had it. But life has a way of shifting the balance. I moved on, literally and figuratively. I invested in something bigger than their rules. I focused on creating, building, and improving, rather than arguing over arbitrary fines or petty disputes. And in doing so, I outgrew them completely. The construction continued. Shops, walkways, lighting, and community spaces began to take shape. Neighbors were excited, children played safely, and even those who were initially skeptical started to see the benefits. Karen's attempts to control or disrupt it had failed entirely. She had clung to authority she no longer possessed, and in the end, her influence evaporated. Looking back, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the best way to deal with someone trying to control your life isn't confrontation or revenge. It's progress. It's moving on. It's leveling up to a place where their rules, their opinions, and their restrictions simply no longer apply. I didn't just leave the HOA behind. I built something better for myself and for the people who wanted change. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making them pay. It's becoming unstoppable. Moral: sometimes the best revenge is moving on and leveling up. Thanks for watching this episode of Confessions of HOA. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more wild HOA dramas, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next episode of Confessions of HOA, where the drama never ends.